Welcome. My name is Ingrid Severson. I'm the project manager for the Pacific Southwest MHTTC to welcome you for today's session, Filling Your Cup, Self-Care with and for Youth Peers. I'm here with our presenters, Shane and Timber with Youth Move National.
My name is Shane McDonald. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. And I am broadcasting to y'all from Massachusetts. I want to thank Ingrid for the land acknowledgement. So I will also acknowledge that I am also in the occupied and unceded land and ancestral territory of the Nipmuc and Massachusetts people. I've been in Massachusetts my whole life, and I've been a youth program specialist with Youth Move National. It'll be 2 years in March. So it's been an awesome journey. And essentially what we do at Youth Move National is try to inform meaningful systems change by elevating the leadership and perspectives of young people actively moving through those youth serving systems. So think things like mental health, juvenile justice, child welfare, education, any system actively engaging young people. I myself am a young person of many lived experiences, and I could not be more grateful to do the work that I'm doing now and to be in shared space with y'all. So with that, I'll pass it to Timber.
Hey everybody, my name is Timber, pronouns that I use are they and them, and happy Black History Month, y'all. I am a youth program director with Youth Move National, specifically working with development and innovation. And so helping make sure that we have funds to support all of the amazing work that we're doing, as well as the amazing work that's happening within our chapter network. I am very excited to be with you all today. I wasn't the original presenter, but I'm happy to share my perspective on this topic and assist as best I can. I don't think I have anything else. Oh, the original people, I live in Inglewood, Colorado. And the original people of Colorado is the Arapaho tribe.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Paige Martin. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. I am a communications and technology coordinator at Youth Move National. I currently live in Southern Oregon, and my work at Youth Move National is pretty much marketing, small IT support, just basically supporting the amazing work that Youth Move National and others do. I'm happy to be here.
All right, so moving on to goals for the day, y'all. What are we hoping that you gather from your experience with us today? So during this module, this presentation, right, we will review what's known as indulgent versus reflective self-care. Self-care is the theme of the day today, so hopefully you're in the right virtual location. We'll also be going over what are known as the 8 dimensions of wellness, explore ways to develop your own personal self-care plans, take some time to reflect on existing self-care practices that we might already be incorporating, and then finally to determine how to make a commitment, a promise to ourselves to maintain our personal wellness through self-care practices. If you search the internet for, if you type in what is self-care, you will get a lot of different responses, especially now because in recent years, the buzz around self-care has really taken off. We hear more and more about it, which is obviously a good thing, but do we really understand it, right? Do we practice it? Where do we even begin to implement or incorporate it in our lives on a regular basis? So we're going to talk a little bit about self-care, what it is, why it's important, and then talk about ways that you can create self-care practices that make a difference in your own personal life and work. So now we'll talk a little bit about the why, right? Why self-care? Our work lives and personal lives are challenging, y'all, right? It's just part of being human, the human experience. We're going from all sorts of places to all sorts of other places, right? From homes to community meetings, to school, to work, to events, to daycares, to care for our loved ones, right? To do important things in our lives. Keeping up on social media even, right? Who knows what else? Self-care is about giving ourselves a moment to pause and to be intentional about our needs. Intentional being the key word there, right? So it's more effective to take a break, right? When feeling overwhelmed, so you can connect with yourself, reground, recenter, and approach your work and daily tasks mindfully with that intention. And self-care isn't just in service to yourself, it's also a radical collective act as human beings. And Audre Lorde puts it amazingly here, right? Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. And without getting like political or anything, I will say that we live in a society, right, where the narrative is very much, grind the grind, right? 9 to 5, keep it going, pull yourself up by your theoretical bootstraps, right? So what Audre Lorde's saying here, right, is that really practicing self-care is an act of reclamation, right? Is an act that challenges that narrative that we shouldn't prioritize ourselves necessarily, or that other things, the greater endeavor of contributing to the world is more important, right? So if you look up and want to learn more about this narrative or perspective of things, if you look up the term radical self-care, Audre Lorde herself talks a bit about how self-care is integral to collective activism and social movements. So that's super rad. And that's the why. So now moving on to the what, right? What is self-care? I've been using that phrase a lot, but what actually is it? So the definition of self-care that we go by at Youth Move National is the following. So self-care can be defined in terms of physical or mental well-being, but at its most basic, self-care is comprised of productive strategies for staying physically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually healthy. And I want to just emphasize too that healthy is not defined in the same way for every person. There is not one person other than you necessarily that can define that for you. So I just want to honor the fact that what self-care looks like to you and what health looks like to you across all of the different dimensions that encapsulate self-care should be determined by you. All right, so let's talk aims, right? Self-care is not simply about limiting or addressing professional or work stressors, right? It's also about enhancing your overall well-being. And there are common aims to almost all self-care efforts, and that can include taking care of your physical and psychological health. Again, what that looks like for you is different for the next person. Managing and reducing stress, honoring emotional and spiritual needs, if that's a realm that resonates with you, right? Fostering and sustaining relationships of all kinds. So that includes family, friends, colleagues, romantic partners. Achieving an equilibrium across one's personal, school, and work lives. That's that work life, that school life, that work school life balance that we always talk about, right? And at the end of the day, again, each of us may and will likely differ in what areas of self-care we emphasize and the balance that we sink among all of those domains, which we'll get into when we talk about the 8 dimensions of wellness. Each life is unique and has its own unique demands, right? We know this. So with that truth, we each must determine, again, what self-care and what overall health and wellness, right, looks like for us and how we want to approach applying that in our own lives. Just some examples of how you can practice self-care, some nice little sentiments here. So to commit to self-care is to make time for it. Sounds simple, right? But with so many responsibilities and commitments, we say, I've got too much going on. I don't have the time. I got this, that, and the other thing to do, right? Self-care can become another item that you avoid doing or something that's added to the long list of things to get to, right? That you never really end up totally getting to. So it's important to reflect on how we use our time, right? Where does your energy go? And really trying to shift to envisioning making changes in your use of time to create space for practices that really nourish you, right? Fill up your cup. We like to say that you can't give from an empty well. We give from the overflow, right? So yeah, moving right along to the balancing act of self-care, right? Because it can be a little bit of a balancing act. Taking good care of oneself seems to be a logical thing to do, right? But again, is often one of the first things to go when we are overcome by stress and competing demands that is just the reality of life. It often takes a back seat, again, to other pressing problems that seem more important at the time, and depending on the moment can feel like indulgent, right? Or even selfish in a way that's really unnecessary. Because self-care behaviors are one of life's basic necessities and not just excessive luxury, right? It's a smart way to care for yourself using all of the effective tools and resources available that feel good and true to you so that you can function in the world. And I also, in terms of like connotations of words and things, right? Health and functioning in a way that feels good and true to you, And also as you'd like to contribute back to others and greater efforts outside of yourself. As human beings, we have a tendency to create what are known as binary systems, and self-care is no different. So binary meaning, you know, this or that, one or two, option A, option B kind of thing. So we often think of certain self-care activities as what's known as indulgent and others as reflective internal work. So what do we mean by that? Indulgent self-care includes short-term feel-good activities that decrease stress in the moment. So think about things like bubble baths, going out for your favorite food, painting your nails, a quiet day of watching movies or binging your favorite show, listening to your favorite song over and over, taking a mental health day off from work even, things like that. Whereas reflective self-care includes self-care that is often harder work and can feel unpleasant or maybe a little stressful in the moment, but sustains our wellness in the long run. So this includes activities and things like journaling, right? Working with a therapist, managing your medications, incorporating movement and activity into our routines, grocery shopping, paying bills, right? Establishing daily routines and rituals, calling a friend or reaching out to a trusted person when you would rather isolate. I know I'm still working on that one. Sticking to a budget, also working on that one. Things like that. And all in all, both indulgent and reflective self-care practices are important to a well-rounded self-care plan or strategy. One is not more important than the other. We definitely need a little bit of both. So that is that balance that we are trying to achieve. Next, we have just another little image sort of illustrating what self-care could be for you. I really love this image and its sentiments here with things like asking for help, right? And asking for what you need when you need it, really putting yourself first when you need to do that, especially if you feel like you're wearing thin and giving all of your energy outwards, right? Really trying to pour that back into yourself. Saying no, setting boundaries, even forgiving yourself. Taking a step back can even be a step forward towards bettering your self-care practices. Again, each life is unique and has its own unique demands. So in that truth, we must each determine what self-care means for us and how we want to apply that and approach that in our own lives. All right, so what are the benefits, right? Practicing self-care, and you can see as you move sort of across this little grid here, practicing self-care will help you in many ways, not all of which are contained in this image here. Self-care can help you identify and manage the general challenges that you face in mental health or other areas of your life, particularly stress and burnout, right? With that 9 to 5, sort of daily grind. It can also help you be aware of any potential personal vulnerabilities you might experience, like trauma is real, secondary trauma is real, and compassion fatigue, especially if you work in human services or with people, is absolutely a reality. A solid self-care practice is most important in helping you establish personal boundaries to achieve, again, more balance, right, and intention in your life, and prioritize your own personal wellness.
Traditional wellness models are traditionally focused on the basic physical and nutritional health of a person, meaning that a lot of these consider a person well if they are free from things like illness or disease. While physical wellness is important, we come to understand that there are many other dimensions of wellness, and they all interact and affect each other. The slide that's on your screen is the 8 dimensions of wellness, and this was developed, these were identified by SAMHSA to help people focus kind of more holistically on what does health and self-care look like. So those sections in particular, one is physical, so looking at things like nutrition, sleep, and movement. Another is emotional, so looking at things like coping skills to affect coping effectively with life and creating satisfying relationships. Looking at how you're doing financially, so satisfaction with current and future financial situations. Socially, having a sense of connection, belonging, and well-developed support system. Spiritually, gets at things like expanding one's sense of purpose and meaning in life. Occupationally, satisfaction and enrichment derived from one's work. intellectually, recognizing creative abilities and finding ways to expand knowledge and skills, and environmentally, occupying pleasant and stimulating environments that support well-being. So, a self-care plan is a plan that is created generally when someone is well to identify what are ways that they can be helped whenever they are having a hard time or when they generally are just kind of feeling depleted and need more, need some kind of rejuvenation, if you will. These are generally created when you are feeling well. I don't know about other people, but I know for myself, if I'm feeling activated or just emotionally all over the place, it's really hard for me to think about what I need or like how to even communicate to other people that I need support, right? And so it's really important that we develop these in a time to where we're really feeling well and we're able to think intentionally around what does support look like, both when we are well and when we are not so well. So self-care plans are not concrete. These are living documents. Living meaning that these documents grow with you. You're able to adapt these whenever you need. If you decide that something's not working for you or something's not serving you, you're more than welcome to adapt it and make sure that the solutions that are being presented are actually something that feels attainable for yourself or for the community that will potentially be offering support for you. Some of the different things that a self-care plan can address are things like triggers or antecedents, right? And so again, being aware of what are those situations that may potentially cause you to feel more unwell, and how can we be aware of them prior to that experience? Maybe this is something that can be communicated to people within your community or even within your work community of like, hey, this is sometime an activating conversation for me. So if I could have some support around it, if you know that it's coming, then that could be really helpful, right? Self-care plans also talk about symptoms, right? So what does it look like and what does it sound like or what does it feel like when you are unwell? Again, when I am unwell, sometimes it's really hard to think about like, what does that look like or what does that feel like or even communicate that with people? So it's helpful to have in your plan, what does it look like whenever I'm starting to kind of go down the spiral, if you will? What does my specific symptoms look like, and how can I communicate that with the people that want to essentially hold me accountable or help me implement my self-care plan? It's important to also list things that are what has or what has not worked, right? So here are strategies that work well for me. These are things that I like. If I'm feeling this way, then this usually get me up out of it. And also acknowledging that sometimes things that people offer for self-care, that we do for self-care, isn't helpful or it hasn't worked. And so sometimes we try new things, and again, they don't work, and that's okay. But we have to be open to being intentional about naming what is not working for us, if you will. And as well as medication, right? So medications is really important that you personally have a list of what medications you're taking, both personally, vitamins, supplements, all of that's included, right? Anything that you take to feel well that contributes to your overall well-being is something that's necessary. And so having those listed out in a clear plan can help someone, again, be more helpful to you, potentially when you're in that space of activation. And then finally, supports. What does support look like for you? Who are those supports that you reach out to whenever you're feeling unwell? Is that via text message? Would you rather talk to some friends within community, or is it important for you to potentially be connected with your therapist or just someone that's able to offer that support? And so again, self-care plans are a way of identifying when you're in this place of activation, who is support for you? What does that look like? And how can we gently bring them in to offer you more support in a way that truly feels supportive and not supportive? We have some resources listed at the bottom of this that will help, again, help you understand and even give you some examples of what self-care plans can look like, right? There are many different ways to record this information. WRAP, or Wellness Recovery Action Planning, is a format from the Copeland Center. Mad Maps is a guide produced by the Icarus Project that is available and attractive to many young people because of its creative layout, that can be colored. University of Buffalo and other academic institutions often have self-care kits and guides designed for social workers, but whose components, designed for social workers, and the components may translate well to youth peer providers. And of course, you can always do it yourself, right? Find you a journal, find you a binder, find you something that's going to be a living document for yourself, and start to jot down these different things, asking yourself these questions, using things like the activities we did today, or even the resources that are presented on this slide to help guide your own personal self-care plan. Next slide, please. As we shared earlier, there's no one-size-fits-all self-care plan, but there is a common thread to all self-care plans. Making a commitment to attend to all the domains of your life, including your physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual, and relationship needs. To develop your self-care plan, you will identify what you value as a need as a part of your day-to-day life, and the strategies that you can employ when you are facing a crisis along the way. I want to go back just a little bit because I didn't expand on it more or say this specifically. The things that you do kind of on a day-to-day to maintain your life are often identified as a maintenance self-care plan. And the strategies that you utilize when you are maybe in crisis or feeling activated is often known as an emergency self-care. And so it's important to make sure that your self-care plan is inclusive of both of those, right? You have multiple strategies that, again, allow people to understand, how can I support you in your time with me? I know the process can be somewhat overwhelming. There's a lot of steps, there's a lot of terminology. Sometimes self-care becomes about, I can afford self-care, right? And so we wanted to offer, again, some more resources that will be shared after the presentation today that will help you take steps to developing your personal self-care plan. I don't have the resources to share at this time, but I will be talking through them. So step one, what do? You identify what do you do now to manage the stress in your life, right? So again, analyzing what are those self-care things that I do to really take care of myself, both as a day-to-day, but also within like those emergency or crisis or potential crisis situations, right? The second step is assessing your current self-care practices. What is working and what needs improving, right? So this is an opportunity to, again, be really honest with yourself around what's working for you. Do you really like going on a walk when you're frustrated? Or would you rather play the game when you're frustrated, right? So being intentional around what is the solution for the feeling that I'm feeling, or what is the solution that is going to help me feel well, and that's related to one of the 8 dimensions of my self-care plan, if you will. Adding self-care practices and eliminating obstacles, right? So this is, again, an opportunity to be really intentional about including more things that work really well for you. Things that are positive, whether they're conversations with other people or strategies to cope with stressful situations, as well as eliminating obstacles. Sometimes there are communities, people, things, situations that get in the way of us really taking care of ourselves, right? So how do we be intentional about not allowing that to get in the way? Sometimes it's easier said than done, but other times, sometimes it's easier said than done. However, we can be really intentional about being honest with ourselves around what is an obstacle, how do we eliminate this obstacle, and how do we include more healthy practices that will really allow us to be accountable to that self-care plan. Number 4 really gets at that conversation again around being prepared for emergency self-care. I'll say it again because I said it at the top, but you can't say it too much, right? Sometimes when I'm frustrated, I'm not feeling great, maybe I'm in crisis, I'm not able to say like, this is what I need, or I don't even want water. Sometimes I don't want people to talk to me, right? So again, it's really important to make sure that we have an emergency self-care plan. So when we're in that place of activation, at the very least, someone that we care about or someone that cares about us is able to refer to something to be able to understand, well, how do I support them during this time? Self-care is really about making a commitment to yourself, right? Ultimately, no one's going to do the things that you need for self-care other than you, right? No one knows how to better fulfill what you need other than you. And so a part of that is committing to self-care. If I know that I feel really drowsy in the morning and I don't like to get up, maybe I'm going to consider that going to bed earlier is like a better option. But to be accountable to that, I need to make sure that I'm not up gaming until 2 and 3 a.m. every night, right? And so I have to be honest with myself and make a commitment to making this change so that my self-care plan can actually work. Number 6 is really about sharing your plan. Someone said in the chat earlier, that they have an accountability partner that helps them stay on track whenever they get off, and they hold each other accountable, right? That's one of the pros of sharing your plan with people within your community as you feel appropriate, right? Sharing your plan with others allows others to understand how to support you in general, but more importantly, when you are in the space of activation. And number 7 is following your plan, right? You have a plan, and sometimes we write all the things down that make us feel good and things that we can do when we're frustrated, and then we never look at it again. So that's not helpful, right? If we are identifying that these are things that are gonna make me feel great, these are gonna make me feel more engaged within the spaces that I'm in, these are gonna make me feel more seen as an individual, we have to actually commit to those actions and those steps. And so it's really important that we're really intentional about following our plan. As you assess your own self-care and develop a practice, consider taking care of yourself in the following ways. Acknowledging your own limits. Is this too much for me? Do I have too much on my plate right now? Do I have the capacity to show up in the totality of who I am at this time? Are things that you could ask yourself to acknowledge your own limits, if you will. Discussing strong emotions that may come up. Planning leisure time and activities you enjoy into your schedule. One of the things that I've recently been doing more as part of my self-care plan, I'm a very creative person, if you will. I love working with my hands. And so I bought a sewing machine. And every week I try to work on like a different project that's like related to sewing, both to challenge myself and to develop my creative skills, right? So that's one of the ways that I kind of plan my leisure or self-care around like my day, if you will. Taking care of yourself physically is also an important component, right? Making sure you're getting those doctor's appointments, making sure that you are taking your medication or any supplements that you need to feel great about your day or to feel like you can really show up as who you are. Reframing negative topics you may be working on, as well as being aware of your own thoughts outside of work, practicing mindfulness and meditation techniques, as well as finding distractions. So this is the self-care assessment that we were referring to. It may look somewhat like a survey, right? But these are questions that will allow you to assess how are you doing in terms of self-care. Are you asking yourself all these different questions? So things like, do you know your medical needs? Or how do you use your healthcare? How many pages is this? It's just one page, so it's pretty short. But again, if you're someone that's like, I don't really know where to start with self-care and I may need some support, this could be helpful for you. So I would definitely check it out. All right, our next slide is about personal mission statements. So the purpose of this is to reflect and create a personal mission statement to ground participants in their purpose when youth work is hard, right? Sometimes being a part of this work, especially being a part of this work as a person with lived experience, this work can be hard. It can be hard not seeing the changes that you know can happen. It can be hard not being able to offer more support to the communities that you are servicing. And it can just generally be hard to be within this environment, right? And so sometimes personal mission statements are a reminder of why we do this work. What is the, well, essentially, what is the why, right? What impact do we want to have within our community, and so on. And so we're going to take 5 minutes to develop a personal mission statement. We are going to ask that you answer the 4 questions on screen. Who am I? What do I stand for? What do I do? And why do I do it?
Appreciated everything that Shane and Timber shared. So I want to give a huge thank you to you both for holding space and for Paige handling the tech side of things.